The vast administrative state, departments and agencies, is filled with people who are not elected, who are not held accountable, who illegally resist, and who do so quite brazenly. Now, this cabal of deep state people is not just limited to the executive branch. It pervades all aspects of government, including government oversight agencies, like the Inspector General's office. Our investigation in Washington, D.C. took us deep inside this group, Democratic Socialists of America, where we met people with top secret security clearance, some self-described communists who abuse their positions in government and talk openly about overthrowing our capitalist system.
I am a government auditor, right? So I work for the Government Accountability Office.
That is Natarajan Subramanian, an auditor for the Government Accountability Office. The GAO, as it's called, is supposed to be an independent, nonpartisan agency that investigates how the federal government spends taxpayer dollars. Subramanian is also an avowed communist and a committed member of DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America.
We have a bunch of just like communists, prefix, and that's basically me. We have some folks who are like Trotskyists or Marxists.
Subramanian admits that he is not alone, that there are many DSA socialist operatives working inside our federal government.
A number of DSA employees are federal, or DSA employees. DSA people are federal employees. Yeah. Like a fair amount of capitalists, just because it's the biggest employer here, right? So yeah.
A couple of them are like full-time on political campaigns right now.
Yeah.
So like when those end, they're like kind of up in the air. There's some like legislative, some policy people. It's kind of all over the place.
People from like various agencies, usually executive branch.
These people, these socialists, are not helping our government. They are actively subverting President Trump's policies.
Like, if you're an executive branch agency, you can slow ball things to a degree that it's like ineffective, and maybe you get in trouble, and maybe you get fired or you resign or whatever. But like you slow them down for a certain period of time.
Slowballing, slowing things down. Bill Marshall, Judicial Watch, tell us about this one.
Yep, inertia, James. It's all about hindering the incoming president's agenda by, in his words, slowballing. It's pervasive throughout the government. We've seen it in GAO, we've seen it at the State Department, we've seen it at DOJ.
So does the deep state extend beyond just the executive branch?
Absolutely. It's pervasive throughout the government. We see it at Judicial Watch, in virtually every agency that we deal with. And this is something that has to be addressed if we want a functioning democracy.
Subramanian admitted one DSA friend works for the Department of Defense and has top secret clearance.
Like, I have a friend who works as a contractor for DOD, and he has a TS clearance, and he's very active.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of DOD stuff does he do?
He works on Syria.
On Syria? So like counter intelligence?
No, it's more just like, work-related stuff.
Okay.
He doesn't like it. He's trying to get out.
That's right. A card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America is involved in Defense Department war planning. We believe this is just the tip of the iceberg. Listening to Subramanian should worry every Democratic American.
So when you're at work, can you do DSA stuff too? Like when you're actually in the office?
Can is a weird question, right? I would get fired if they knew that I was, and I do.
Yeah.
I do it on my phone.
It's like, I'm in the clear. No one knows. I spent 6 hours yesterday doing social media for DSA.
Technically, everything I'm doing with DSA is stuff I'm not supposed to be doing for work. So like,
What do you mean?
Like it's explicitly prohibited. So like, if they find out, I could get in trouble basically.
So this guy, Subramanian, an auditor for the Government Accountability Office and self-described communist, is particularly brazen about all the various rules he's violating. Steve, tell us what's going on here.
Well, although the GAO is exempt from the Federal Hatch Act, it does have its own internal guidelines, including the Yellow Book and an ethics handbook that basically apply to GAO employees the same standards as the Hatch Act. That means no use of federal time to engage in partisan political activity.
As a GAO employee, Submaranian is required to fill out activity and financial disclosure forms annually. He is supposed to declare outside income and any activities that might be considered conflicts of interest.
I have informed them. I filed all the paperwork I needed to file.
Yeah.
I was purposely a little bit vague about what kind of organization it was in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's a community organization. We do this, we do that. I wasn't like, it's a socialist organization and we want to, destroy capitalism.
The disclosure forms ask how much time is spent on the outside activities. Submaranian listed 0 to 10 hours per week for his, quote, social welfare organization, unquote.
How much do you think that you work for DSA, like per week?
Probably like 20 hours. 10 or 20 hours. I don't know. It depends on the week.
Yeah.
But like, I was doing DSA stuff at work today.
So here we have not only using federal time and resources to engage in partisan political activity, we have somebody who's lying about it. And lying about it on an official government form could implicate 18 U.S.C. Section 1001, which is a very broad law that actually prohibits lying to the federal government.
And when they get on my ass about it 3 years from now, when they actually realize what I've been doing so much, I'll be like, well, I've been filing these disclosures every year.
So these forms right here, these are the actual federal government ethics and financial disclosure forms that Nate Submaranian lied about. He just masked the fact that he was doing all this Democratic Socialist of America work.
James, how did you get these forms? We can't even get these forms at Judicial Watch because GAO is not an executive branch agency. It's not subject to the Freedom of Information Act.
Funny you mention that. Nate Submaranian, he actually just voluntarily gave us the forms. He just gave them to us because he knew that nothing would happen to him. He knew there'd be no accountability.
That's exactly why we need more transparency in the government, more exposure of forms just like these across the government, including at the GAO.
We heard a very similar story from State Department employee Stuart Carafa in part 1 of our series. It seems these guys all know they can get away with anything.
So, is there a specific law that says, that you would be violating if, that you're involved with
violating
DSA?
GAO policy. I don't think it would be a federal statute.
Okay. Well, that's good.
It would be fireable, though, because all legal activities automatically at will.
Submaranian keeps talking about how he's going to get fired, but he also kind of talks about how he's getting away with it. What do you make about this auditor of the Government Accountability Office?
He makes me madder than virtually anyone else I can imagine. He's gloating that he's not doing his job. He's gloating that he's not doing the job that the people hired him for. He's exactly the reason we need to fire the swamp. He is that example. The fact is, Congress needs to act. We need the Merit Act passed so Subramanian can be fired in an expedited manner. Congress can take that action. They need to do it now so we can get this kind of guy out of the government.
Subramanian says his radical politics are an open secret at his government job.
Everyone in my office who's close to me now not only knows that I'm a socialist, knows that I'm in DSA. And I try not to...
They do know or they don't know?
They do know.
Okay.
A lot of people know. Management does not know. You have to be strategic about things like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of my coworkers know, not my project team, but people that I've worked with in the past, people in my union know, stuff like that.
And they're okay with it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're actually big fans.
Yeah.
DSA is a political organization that supports candidates for public office. Subramanian says DSA's objective is to elect people they can control.
I would say we aim to endorse only people who are DSA.
Okay.
Sometimes we endorse people who aren't.
Yeah.
Like the national organization endorsed Bernie. Bernie's not technically a DSA member or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's very good to do that because you want to have a certain level of discipline over the candidate and over when they get elected. You want to be able to say, look, we made your campaign. We elected you. You have to.
You have to, yeah.
Subramanian's priorities are clear. His work for the Democratic Socialist of America comes first.
I'm very good at slacking off on my job until I really need to not slack off on my job. And I'm very good at doing things in a very short period of time when I need to do that.
Yeah.
So I'll just a lot of it is just I slack off, I'm doing DSA stuff.
You'll be doing what?
DSA stuff.
Yeah.
And straight up, I explicitly had the discussion with myself about, do I care more about having this job or do I care more about the movement?
and I was like, obviously making it.
What do you have doing tomorrow for your
Well, I'm
B-Day?
working from home, so I'm not really
That's good.
doing anything.
Do you actually like have to like work, or do you just like
I have to work. Well,
like work?
I can. The thing about it is, I can log on and then just be like, I'm not gonna do anything for half an hour. I might respond to a couple of emails, but like, there's no one looking over my shoulder. So like, a lot of times what I'll do, and this is kind of what I'm doing right now, is like I'll drink the night before. I telework, and then I'm like, if I'm like 15 minutes late to log on, no one checks.
Yeah.
And people aren't calling me. And
That's been my attitude. It's like I break rules every day. At any point, I could get fired for stuff that I do with DSA.
After we announced this investigation, DSA members wrote that we were doxing federal government workers. As always, our media critics decry our tactics rather than reporting what we exposed. What is worrisome is that the mainstream media enables a lack of transparency for those who govern us while doxing private citizens. The methods of undercover journalism have been around and celebrated for more than 100 years. We stand by our journalism and our methods. We stand by our reporting. And spare us the indignation over our ethics when the professionalism of journalism has abandoned its raison d'etre of truth to power, truth and transparency to those who govern. It's time for the reforms, for the executive and legislative branches to stop abdicating their responsibilities. Privacy does not belong to the federal government workers on the job. It belongs to the people. And what happens when deep state actors inside these agencies are targeting private citizens while on the job? Well, then a real constitutional crisis brews. Stay tuned.